Viewer discretion is advised.
Boom, perfect timing.
Uber driver Ryan Vining had picked up 2 passengers and was on his way to their drop-off location. Mr. Vining explained to me that the roads that night were completely empty and that he noticed that he was approaching a traffic light that was red. As he slows down to a complete stop, he crosses and goes beyond the solid white line of the traffic light. Once the light turns green, Mr. Vining continued on his way down the road. Officer Chadwick Hughes and Officer Delgadillo of the Fort Worth Police Department in Texas would follow Mr. Vining in their patrol car for several seconds before finally pulling him over.
I don't remember the specific day. I think they've got it time stamped on the video, but I think it was January 2019, and this was wee hours of the morning, like somewhere between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning, which is when I usually like to drive then, because the roads are wide open and everything's kind of clear. And I picked up a couple passengers, a guy and a girl, and I was just taking them home. And tell me if this sounds familiar. It's 2 in the morning, no one's on the road. You see a red light ahead of you. You can clearly see there's no cars around, nothing's going on, and so you're going to slow down. Now, hopefully the light turns green before you get there, right? You don't want to have to stop and then start again, but it doesn't happen. But you're slowing down nice and smooth. You see that the other lane is turning yellow. Obviously yours is about to turn green. So, but you're going slow. You don't want to come to a complete stop if you don't have to. And so in that process, you go a little bit past the white line, like barely crawling, but it turns green and you go. All right. So then the cops pull me over.
King John Zebra, 4925, 3100 South Riverside.
During my investigation, I was able to get in contact with the Fort Worth Police Department Internal Affairs Unit. I wanted to know which officer was which in the dashcam video. I spoke with Detective Chadwick Scroggins, and he was kind enough to assist me by sending me this email. It reads, the involved officers are Officer Delgadillo and Officer Hughes. Officer Delgadillo is the first officer that approaches the driver's side in the video, and Officer Hughes is on the passenger side. The officers switch position on the second approach. So please keep this in mind when you are viewing the dashcam video.
So the cop came, I provided all my information, insurance, license, was very polite, yes, sir, no, sir, not hostile, aggressive or anything like that. And when he asked my passengers for their ID, I stated, and of course, when you're standing up to police, you'll get a little bit nervous no matter how much you prepare. Like, I said, they don't have to provide that if they don't want to. That's it. And he's like, what? Okay. He was taken aback that I stood up to him, but he was basically like, okay, he took my information. They didn't collect their ID, and then they went back. And that's when you can see on the video in the squad car, their conversation, which I didn't know any of this at the time.
Oh yeah, we're gonna load this guy up tickets. He told you that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what, Mr. I know everything.
To ask his passengers? I mean, we can ask all we want. Yeah. They don't have to give us anything.
And I'd already looked up, like, what do I do if I have passengers and a cop pulls me over? Like, what's the law? Can the cops mess with my passengers? Can they get ID? And the answer I got was that they're allowed to ask the passengers for their ID, but the passengers don't have to provide it if they don't want to. And so I'm like, okay. And so I decided in advance, if I ever got pulled over, then I would let them know they don't have to provide it if they don't want to, but it's their decision. If they want to, that's up to them. But most people don't know their rights, and if the cops come knocking, they're just gonna be like, here, take all my info.
You just got yourself a ticket, buddy. Because I wouldn't have ticket cited. Did either of the passengers say anything to you?
I said no.
And then he cut you off?
Because you don't have to provide you
So
information.
technically, wouldn't that be interfering? Nah, I can stretch on that. It just cost him money.
Make sure the vehicle's good. Make sure they have no obstruction. Lights on. He didn't stop.
Yeah, he didn't stop for that limit line. Check him in the portal.
Yeah, it's not about that. Nothing.
Was he wearing a seatbelt?
Yeah, I think so.
Were they wearing their seatbelts?
I don't know. I shouldn't.
Because if they weren't, then that's our PC to talk to them. I wish I'd known he was going to be that. I almost thought he was an Uber.
Yeah,
When they were in the backseat, I was like, they were actually the most responsible gamer people I've ever seen.
failed to yield right away. Pedestrian. What's about improper passing? Driving across median.
That's in the middle. I want the stick.
Oh, we gotta check to see if he has a front license plate. Cutting across property. Crossing double white line? No.
Yeah.
Okay. No, we'll check see if he has a front license plate. And also, you could ride him for the stop sign.
And then we gotta go all the way back to that. Alright, when we walk back up there, you want to check his license plate? Let me see what the code is so I can just add it if that's what it is.
Huh?
Let me see what the code is so I can just have it ready to go. So it's no front license plate. Where would that be at?
I think it's on the back page. This one's in the middle.
No front license plate. 07002. So let me know if he has it.
Yes, I do.
You know, he gives me a ticket for running the red light, and it's like, okay, you know, I mean, technically, yeah, you know, I'm a little past the line.
Your license. Do you have a good phone number?
Yes, sir.
Alright. Well, we wrote you for those white lines at red lights. You're not allowed to go over them while the light's red. We have you on camera going past that white stop line is what it's referred to as
Okay.
when the light was red. So that's what this is. This is not an admission of guilt. It's just you saying you're going to take care of it. You have 11 days to contact the court. I need your signature right here. Do you study law or anything like that?
No, sir.
Well, just so you know, if I wanted to get their information, I could, because I have PC. They're not wearing seatbelts. You should make sure your passengers are wearing seatbelts.
Yes, sir.
Don't tell you how to do your job. Don't tell us how to do ours. Information on the back of phone numbers and how you can contact the court and other information. All right?
Okie doke.
I didn't know what the cops had been talking about in their car, but at that point, but once I got it, I went home and I played it, and I about fell out of my chair. I'm like, I'm going to win this. Like I've got them on so many different angles. The first thing that came to mind, you know, from their conversation is they're like, you know, let's load this guy up with tickets. It's like, okay. They went back to the car with the full intention, like they were going to go through every possible infraction they could possibly think of and throw everything at me. And in the end, all they could come up with was that one thing that they originally pulled me over for. I'm glad they didn't have anything else. But he said things like, it's like, well, you know, normally I thought he was an Uber driver when they were in the back seat. It's like normally Uber drivers are the most, responsible, safest. He kind of trailed off, and he's like, probably wouldn't have given him a ticket if he hadn't said anything. It's like, okay, I'm like, okay, I can work with this, because the question when it comes to court, the first, before seeing the film, it's like, do you think you probably would have given me a ticket if I hadn't have stood up for my passengers' constitutional rights of privacy? And then it doesn't matter what he says. If he says, yes, I would have, then I'll have him on perjury, because I have the film where he says I probably would not have. And if he says no, then the next question is, so it's like, well, didn't you swear an oath to protect the Constitution, and shouldn't you, so if you wouldn't have given me a ticket for the infraction, but you're giving me a ticket because I protected someone's constitutional rights, it's like, and try to get that discrepancy out there. Like, so you gave me a ticket because I protected someone's constitutional rights, which you swore an oath to do. What they're doing is what I call phishing. They're looking for drunk drivers. So yeah, they're looking for that. But then they might also be looking for expired tags and licenses and whatever else they can kind of get you for. If you want to be cynical, they're just looking for revenue. If you want to be as generous as possible, they're trying to keep the roads safe from drunk drivers and stuff. And he even said, like, he probably wouldn't have given me a ticket he wouldn't have given me a ticket if I hadn't have stood up for my passengers. So that's one of the things they said in the squad car. So it's like, that was one of the things that's going to try to use against him if it went to court. After going for not guilty, then I got a court date. And in the actual court date, they've got a whole room full of people that are all having their trial the same day. And the prosecutor accuses himself to go into the other room, presumably to see all the police officers and all the witnesses that have shown up. He comes back, and then he reads off a list. Like, if I read your name off this list, you're free to go. And he goes down the list, and I'm one of them. Like, they don't even give you a piece of paper. By the way, your case is dismissed. Like, you don't know, you could have lied. And like, oh, you didn't show up for your court. I don't know. But he read my name off the list, and I'm like, okay, I guess I don't get to have my day in court. And that was it. Just went home.
It is unclear whether or not either officer faced any discipline for their misconduct. However, about 2 years after the Rhine Vining incident, Officer Chadwick Hughes was fired from the Fort Worth, Texas Police Department for racially insensitive social media posts.
New Fort Worth Police Chief Neil Noakes, just sworn in last week, has wasted little time firing 3 officers, including Chadwick Hughes. According to Hughes' termination letter, he wrote a racist message on Facebook, "Black at it," under a photo of a man robbing a convenience store. When someone criticized the comments, Hughes wrote, "Your white shame is showing, my man." When someone wrote to him, "I'm sure your father taught you that typical Blue Lives Matter behavior," Hughes fired back, "At least I know who my father is, unlike most of the black children growing up in America." Hughes worked in the Central Patrol Division, the area around downtown, and was hired 3 years ago. A fellow officer reported his Facebook comments, and the department started an investigation before anyone in the community had even heard about it. A longtime department critic.
Obviously, I knew right away I was going to contest the ticket, because I will always contest every ticket that I can. That's just the general rule of thumb. It doesn't matter what it is, even if they've got you dead to rights, you take every ticket to court and request a trial by jury. Now, if you are clearly 100% innocent of any actual law breaking and you've got film and backup, then you can go to a judge. But if there's any subjectivity to it at all, the judge is going to side with the cops. So, go for a trial by jury. But it's more a matter of slow down the system. And if everybody contested every ticket, then they'd have to stop giving away so many BS tickets, and I'm just doing my little part to help the world.